There is no shortage of videos out there in which people are struggling to cut a tire. Stick with me and I'll make it as painless for you as possible. And you can make a proper tire swing. That is a real swing from a tire that will last you a lifetime and it will be as strong as the rope you use. Super comfy, super safe, super durable, and absolutely a timeless classic for a fun time outside. Before we get into cutting a tire, and before any mention of a rope, let's talk about the few things that you'll need in order to pull this off easily. Number one, a utility knife with a brand new blade. Preferably your knife is one of these workhorse models so that you can grab it with a whole hand and pull. Most of the time I favor something smaller, but in this case we really want the power that a standard utility knife can give you. Number two, a liquid spray bottle that is mostly water with enough dish soap in it to give it some color. This is not just for cleanser, it's also a lubricant to assist the brand new utility knife blade in easily moving through the rubber. Number three, an angle grinder with a cutoff disc. This is because a tire is made of two things. Well, three really. It is a rubber with layers of fabric mesh. Both of those things can be cut with the knife. But there's a third part, which is a steel mesh that you need the grinder to get through. You could, in theory, use a hacksaw to get through those parts. And you will have my respect if you do so. But the grinder is the ideal way. And try not to use a Sawzall except as a last resort.
They finally caught up with the animal and shot it with a tranquilizer dart to remove the tire, which was rimmed with metal. They had to unfortunately cut off the antlers.
And finally, for drilling a hole through the tire, you'll need a 1-inch hole saw. That's what I recommend. You can use a uni bit, of course, a lot of people will, but I like the 1-inch hole saw if it's available to you. The tire. Try to find one that's got a sort of smooth tread, something cool looking like this, and not too knobby. Knobby means thicker, and thicker means heavier, and heavier means more dangerous. Also, knobby is a vector for finger injuries. Try to find something smooth, ideally worn down. And don't pay anything for one. One way to get one is to go ask your local auto shop. But an even better way, and how I got this one, is I just went down to the creek and looked for one that somebody was nice enough to leave there. In order to get through a tire easily, you have to understand how it's constructed. So let's put this one I've already cut back together and take a close look at it. The hardest part to cut on a tire is right here. This is called the bead, and this is the part that has the most metal in it. The easiest part on the tire to cut is right here where the sidewall starts to meet the tread, and that's where you want to make your knife cut. Okay, strictly speaking, in order to make a swing, you don't have to cut the bead at all, because you can just make this cut and take this ring part and get rid of it. But you really should cut the bead into pieces because it makes this part easier to dispose of. And as long as you have the soap and the angle grinder, cutting the bead won't be a problem for you. Okay, magnification time. Let's take a look at the bead up close. This is where you'll make your cut for your swing, and this is just sidewall, where these lighter colored bits are nylon. It's a fabric that runs through the tire and strengthens the sidewall. But here, that's where our steel is. And so the general idea for cutting a tire is use a utility knife everywhere you can, and where you can't, that's the place that you use the grinder. And also, repeat this in your head over and over. Lubricate everything. So here we go. Tire cutting procedure 101. Getting this ring separate from your swing. Ideal form will look like this. One hand stabilizes the tire while the other hand makes this cut, as I said, right at the line where the tread begins and the sidewall ends. You will lubricate your cut always with soap. It's nice to have a second person, a helper, to keep it nice and wet the whole time. Starting the cut, you can make a couple shallow cuts like this until you get through. Once you poke through, now you use your power position and you pull. You'll feel it unzip. If you're experienced with a utility knife and somewhat reckless like I am, you might find it more comfortable to keep your stabilizing hand here. But that's, technically speaking, dangerous knife form. But if you are like me, you'll pull only so close and then you'll regroup and keep your hand far away. A less natural form but safer is to just keep your hand all the way over here. And again, having a helper over there stabilizing the tire is useful. As you cut, again, keep it wet and you'll just feel it sort of unzip. When you get the whole way around and you're about ready to separate it, that's when you are super careful, because when it connects, the knife will give. It's easy, you can do it. It doesn't need to be hard. Just keep the knife cut wet and be sure to use a new blade. In fact, I would use a new knife blade for each side of the tire. At this point, the part of the tire that has the bead on it can be removed from our lives entirely, unless, of course, you'd like to use it to make something else. This would make a pretty durable piece of playground equipment. I use a set of these in my home gym, and they can be used just like a set of gymnastics rings. This would be great for the end of a hanging rope swing. To make it, you would simply make a second cut somewhere around here. Remember, the toughest part of the tire to cut is here, and that means this ends up being the strongest part. At this point, you have a big hoop sort of thing that doesn't have any strength to it. And the way to cut it is push down on it so that it goes into tension, and then knife cut where the tension is. It's always easier to cut anything under tension, and it's always more difficult to cut anything under compression. Compression means material that's being squashed, whereas tension means material that's being pulled apart. In this case, the tire is being squashed into compression on the backside here, so we want to cut it like this. Cut what you can with a utility knife, and what doesn't cut, this thing. And while cutting with the angle grinder, keep it wet with the soap solution. Why? It will make it less likely to catch, more likely to cut, and perhaps most importantly of all, it dramatically reduces the smoke. And tire smoke is awful. Let's talk about dimensions for a moment. The tire's width is almost 9 inches. You want to shoot for something like that. It also has a sort of slightly convex C-shaped profile. And that's good because it cradles the butt. From the end, we want to measure down to about 34 inches. That size is entirely arbitrary, but I gave it some consideration. It's because I made this prototype a 30-inch seat, and that's great for most cases. But I want a wider stance on it so I can use it as a surfer swing. And 34 inches feels comfortable to me. I also want to mark out a nice big 4.5-inch radius here. Round corners means it's less likely to hurt if it hits into your hip or something. This is a piece of rubber. This is a piece of rubber put under tension. Finding the tension matters when you're cutting a tire. If it seems like I'm being obsessive over this point, I am, and it's because it's the single thing that I want you to take from this video. It's going to look misleadingly easy when I cut it here, because in real life you're going to have to fumble with your tire until you can get it under tension enough so that it cuts easily. But when it's here on the workbench, I need only to bend it down like this and it puts it under tension. But when you first begin to open negotiations with your tire, if you press it down like this, do not cut the top because it's not going to help it. You would want to cut it at its side. That zipper sound is just the sound of the blade going dull. It means that we're hitting the metal and we're not really cutting anymore. So now we'll take what we can get from this side. Bend it down just a little, put it under mild tension. I'm going to scratch the surface. More tension now. And more tension. And more. And at this point, I've taken everything that it's going to give me with the knife. That means it's time to grind. Oh, but before we start, did I mention tension and grinding? Same rule applies. Actually, it's probably more important here because if you put it under compression like this, it will pinch your cutting disc and potentially kick and make a mess. So only cut under tension, not compression. And lubricate. I can go much faster. I can get through it in just a couple of seconds, but I'm going slow because I don't want to breathe the smoke in here. I might be through the metal, and that means I might be able to finish it off with the knife. Again, I could probably go a lot faster, but this is sort of for demonstration so that you get the feel. And also, it's still smelly in here. I really would prefer to do this outside. But it's too cold out today, and I'm almost done. There we go. Workshop is not full of smoke, but it does smell in here. But if I would have tried to cut that much tire with a grinder without the soap, I'd be coughing, choking, and gasping for air. Also, there's a good chance that this would have caught a bunch of times and wrenched on my arm. Okay, that does it for basic cuts, but for sculpture, I have to take it outside. I'm having trouble recommending that you put a radius on your swing because when you cut the wire that's inside the tire at anything other than 90 degrees, the wires end up sharpening into a point, and this is problematic. We can address this, but it takes extra time and precaution, and so it's sort of a safety concern and a pain, but this is how I did it. I'm working on just the radius first, as though I were to cut it out with scissors, and then I'll worry about sculpting this sharp edge by rounding it over a little bit. Whoops. Okay, I'm half done. I did the rounding and the smoothing on this half, and I haven't done this half yet, but I wanted to stop and show you something. When you're smoothing this over, you might liberate one of these belts. Here's one, and it is like a needle. So when you're smoothing it over, you should probably use a file and see if any come up like this one did. You don't want to discover it with your hand. Don't rub your hand over it. Use the file to feel. And if you do find one, grind it off and smooth it down. And this is one of those cases where it's good to file back and forth. Man, admittedly, I haven't seen the current research in a while, but I'm pretty sure that 4 out of 5 doctors would recommend that you smoke Camels instead. I'm intentionally trying to work one of those wires up, just so that it doesn't pop up later. And anything that I can feel, I'll smooth down. And finally, we'll do the rounding sculpture by taking the big part off with a sharp knife. And then we give it a final smoothing with the side of the disc. Same thing goes right here and anywhere else that we can find a sharp edge. You don't have to take your time with it, but the more you do, the smoother it'll be. I said not to, and I still did it. You'll feel it here as like an end grain, but it's not sharp. The only dangerous spots are here and here, and you can address it. You are in absolutely no danger from anything sharp on most all of the swing. I'm only pointing it out for the sake of being thorough. Now here's a great way to discover where the belts are still a problem. Just take a rag and rub. And if there's any snag at all, like right there, if the needle's in there and it's going to come loose, you'll yank it loose. And if it catches at all, we can still smooth it down. Time for drilling. Drilling a perfect 1-inch hole in a tire. But first, a note. There's a reason that this video is so long. It's because tires are a technological achievement. From the very beginning, tires have been designed to be tough. And by now, they are. Modifying one by cutting it or drilling into it is no joke. Try to stay patient. Go slow. Don't let anything heat up too much. Don't ruin your tools. And don't get hurt. Just stick with the procedure, and we'll get through this. I would have preferred to use an 1 1/8" hole saw, but I don't have one. Whatever you use, just be sure to use lots of cooling fluid. So check out how all the steel got spun in this direction. If we spin it in the other direction, a lot of it will break off. And what doesn't can be sanded off. I do have a video about how to make these customizable drum sanders. And it doesn't seem to get much video traction, but it really is a good idea. I swear by these things. I recommend you watch. Links everywhere. You know where to find them. Good enough, because the next step is still going to protect our rope. PVC, about 3/4 of an inch ID, just a little bit heavier than 1 inch OD, and that means it's a tight fit. These grommets are doing a couple of things. First and most obvious, they're protecting the rope from being frayed by the tire, but they're also helping to distribute the force of the rope more evenly onto the tire, and that will keep the tire from cracking. It's also worth mentioning that it creates a little gap here, and hopefully that helps to reduce the amount that the tire rubs against your hip when you sit on it. And in that respect, it seems to be working pretty well. For the swing we were just looking at, I just used a hammer to pound the PVC directly in. You can do that and it will be just fine, but since I can, I'm going to reduce the thickness a little bit. Took off just a kiss, just to make my life a little easier. We went at about a 1/2 inch or 1/4 inch up. Any more than that, and we'll heat parts of the pipe we don't want to heat up, like what's going on right now in this outtake clip. It's heating up too low on the pipe, and then when we try to mushroom it with the hammer, it just sort of flops and folds over. As for heating it up, a torch will work just fine if you keep it moving. And so will a heat gun. And so will both a torch and a heat gun. But after doing this a number of times, I settled into a sort of circular motion with the heat gun. That was my favorite way. Use your free hand to hold the cord out of the way. The PVC will become sort of like a wet noodle, not really elastic or clay-like, so you'll have to keep forming it as it cools. The good thing is you can heat it up as many times as you need to. Once you're finally happy with it, spray it and it will freeze. This is about 1/4 of an inch thick. And that's where I'm going to end this video, because the rope is a different subject. And attaching a swing to 2 trees with a rope is somewhat of a complicated subject. And in my case, I didn't even tie knots. So if that's something that interests you, maybe it will be the subject of a different video. Express that you're interested in the comments. I hope you found this somewhat interesting. Or even better, useful. See you later.